welcome back to another Mask of Momentum video. Today we're going over, everybody's favorite tier list for Pro Tour Singapore. I think this one's going to be a pretty interesting one. This is probably one of the most kind of wide open metas that we had in a long time. I think it kind of gets a little bit more scrunched when we get to the top of the meta, but we'll get into that when we get there. But currently, I'm, a week out from the PT basically. I got the suitcase in the back, I got the haircut, reserved with my barber for tomorrow, before I leave. Gotta look nice for the stream games eventually, so it's gonna be looking good, So let's get into it here. We got some like pretty interesting tiering system this time. I don't think there's anything that's like S plus currently in the meta, so I kind of went with like a tier 1, 1.5 to 2.5. Basically, I think the difference between like 1 and 1.5 is pretty decent, with 1.5 and 2 being a little bit closer, and 2 and 2.5 just being like, you really have to compel me to want to be playing a tier 2 and tier 2.5 deck unless you found something. And then I also put a reaching / could surprise thing for something that's a little bit like more unknown, or you're very, very good against maybe 1 or 2 of the top decks, and then you're just kind of dead in the water versus a lot of other stuff. But if you gem roulette in, there obviously have the don't play tier. It's like the most common tier, and LL. I think I got most of these out of here, but Dash literally just hit LL this basically this morning. Well, yesterday at this point. We knew, but pretty interesting with Azalea living at 999, which is kind of crazy. I didn't think it was going to happen ever again, because like didn't Prism go to 999 before, like OG Prism, and then everybody was like, wait, what? Or it was like somewhere close to there, but it was pretty interesting. But let's get right into it. Hopefully I got little timestamps on the bottom on this, but I'm just gonna put anything that like I just don't think you should just be in don't play. I'm just gonna immediately put in don't play, and then I'll talk about the other stuff. I'm gonna put both of these into don't play. Obviously, it's kind of where it's at. I think specifically, I'm also going to just kind of jump to like what I think is the top decks first, so it makes the puzzle it makes everything else easier. So I'm gonna put Gravy here. Basically, the new best deck from High Seas. I think it was the best out of the 3 by a very wide margin. I think it would have been more represented at US Nationals if US Nationals wasn't like basically week of release. I think people needed like one more week to really understand like the Gravy deck was that good. Obviously, Jacob Shaker in the finals, showed us that the deck was already good. Like immediately had a pretty interesting build of just like basically trying to play Whaler in every single matchup. It is way more typical of like the board-based type of like illusionist kind of decks, and I think there's been so many different Gravy decks specifically that have been out there, that it is very interesting that like there's so many builds of Gravy. Like there's a lot of them that are like lower allies, more tendency, or like kind of a mid-range list that's like not playing like Whaler, but it's playing like 9 Tipple and just playing basically the efficient chain ender ones. There's like the one ofs list. There's a whole bunch of other stuff currently in the Gravy thing, but I think all of them are very good. I think the meta is kind of built around Gravy being one of the best decks in the format. Do I think it is the best deck in the format? I don't think it's the best deck in the format. I do think it's like a top 3, top 4 deck right now. But I think everything around the top of the meta is around Gravy specifically, because it is so powerful. It has such like these big high rolls because of the gold, all the, if things line up correctly for the deck, Gravy is just giga insane. So obviously going to be our first tier 1 deck. We'll see a little bit more of the tiering going, left to right throughout it, but it's barely where I'm at with it right now. Basically, I'm going to go to like the top decks and come down when we get into it. But next thing I really wanted to talk about was Syndra. Syndra was tied for the first amount of wins in the PQ season. It was tied with Slippy at 8 and was kind of one of the most represented throughout all of national season. Did have not the best conversion rate. It's one of the most played decks, but when it's like the best, it might not be the best deck. I think honestly Syndra is kind of like a medium to like good deck that is in a really good meta for it currently, and so it's been performing very, very well. I think it does a powerful things. It's very consistent. It does the same thing literally every single time, basically every turn, unless you randomly break without a starter. But it has so many starters in the deck, and does basically the same thing throughout, but it does it very powerfully, and that's something that's very good. Gravy is a little bit more inconsistent. Well, this is the consistent aggro deck that's linear, does the same thing basically every single turn, and you're getting there. It does have the consistency to a fault, though. Like, when you look at it, sometimes it just does the same thing, but when you're behind, it can't get back into the game unless like drastic things happen. Because if it's getting its 14 to 16 value every single turn, if your opponent is ahead and is also getting 14 to 16 every single turn, you can never beat them, basically, unless you're getting like a mask momentum trigger and like their hand's like worse than they thought, they should have blocked, you're making a mistake. But I don't think that's going to happen much to the PT. But I think it is going to be probably the most popular aggro deck. It is the linear aggro deck of the format here. I'm going to put it slightly above Gravy. Basically, actually, I would put Gravy over Syndra. I would say this is like Syndra has a very good Gravy matchup specifically. It's just like it's a fucking house, right? Like I think it gets a little bit better if you're really teching for it from the Gravy side, but I think Syndra is naturally good into it. And is the reason why it's like kind of up here is like I expect Gravy and Syndra to be very highly represented for the PT, and I think Gravy being highly represented is really good for Syndra because it wants to kind of prey on the illusionist deck of the format. It is a necromancer, but the illusionist deck of the format. But it's going to kind of struggle versus a lot of other things like around this. But it's going to have even good matchups and then a really good matchup at the top. Next thing I want to talk about is Verdance first. I think Verdance is very good right now. The thing I would say about Verdance here is it has basically one of the best matchups into all like these mid-range pile type of decks that are like more disruption, more mid-range, that are super linear in their deck. She just kind of outvalues and kind of beats everything. So like the decks that I'm kind of saying is like the Mario list, the Florian, these Fang, Victor, Jarl, all of that stuff. She just destroys them. It's like not even a close game. Like the thing with Verdance is like the Gravy matchup can be solved. I think like this is like closer than what people expect, and like that's pretty fine. I think you're unfavored versus Syndra. I don't think this is the most matchup, but I think this matchup really comes down to if the Verdance draws Fellings. Like it's just a matchup where like Verdance just need to draw Fellings. Like you're gonna block the significant amount. The Fellings is basically true damage plus it's just like true damage against them. Like Syndra's not blocking you like at all unless their hand's bricked. So like every 8 that you send at them is really good. You basically have to like walk them down and hope they can't play 5-card hand to you when you're like low enough to where they can just kind of snowball the game over 2 turns. But basically Verdance is just beating everything else, and it just has a good matchup. It also has a good matchup against Slippy, which is going to be very important, which I'll talk about next. I think this is going to be our third tier 1 deck. I'll say my tier 1 is going to be pretty wide here before with a couple heroes, and then I'm going to go down more this way. I think it builds a little bit more of a story of like it is the top 4 decks, and then there's a gap between those decks and everything else. The last one of those decks is going to be Slippy. Slippy was also tied for the same amount of most wins, which is going to be 8. Specifically, I think Slippy is very, very good right now. Its matchup spread is really good. I think this has been a secret like good deck in the format for a very long time. I think it struggled with the Mario increase at US Nationals, but the Mario has decreased recently. New was a problem for the deck. It wasn't just like is a very hard matchup to, and you can kind of get cheesed by the new a lot of the time. So it just kept it down for a very long time. Verdance was a very, very high popularity, and Florian was a high popularity, which is like not good matchups for it. But right now, the really thing that's going for it is it has one of the best matchups against Syndra. It is like literally 70-30. It is like a matchup that you basically want to see every single time that you sit down with Slippy. I've been such a fan of the matchup. It's just incredible for you. And then Your Gravy matchup is above 50%. It's about like 55, and it's a strong 55, like not a loose 55, but a strong 55, if you understand what I'm saying. And those are very, very good for you. I think you're about a 45% into Verdance. Realistically, I think you're 45% into Verdance if you're playing like a very, very top tier Verdance. Like I always say that like Slippy is 45% versus Verdance, but 50% versus normal people. But I play against Caleb on the daily, and you're definitely 45% when you're playing against somebody that, you know, plays Verdance to such a high caliber like him. But if you're playing against, you know, basically anybody else playing Verdance, I think the matchup is very even. So I'm going to say that Slippy is the best deck in the format. I think it's like top 8 to win percentage was just incredible this PQ season. I think it had low representation throughout, and it still did very well. I personally brought him to a 6-3 run, so I'm a little bit at US Nationals, and I'm kind of biased, only losing to 3 Assassins, 2 News, and a Mario. Like, if News not in the format anymore, Mario has seen a lot less representation, and I think Mario has a lot of problems currently in this meta. So I think Slippy is just in a great place. I think you got to watch out for a couple of these decks that are like kind of in this tier 2 range that might be trying to snipe you. But I think, you know, when we look at the top decks, you know, you're you know, slightly above average against this. You're very favored against Syndra. You're slightly below on this, so these kind of even out. So you're looking at like basically even, very favored in tier 1. Like I want to be where Slippy is right now. It is a little bit biased. It is, you know, a deck that I'm very proficient at and something that I like really playing. I think these 4 represent something very complex in this meta. You have the, you know, kind of mid-range disruption deck. It's kind of like aggro like disruption. You know, it has the classic assassin stuff like I'm gonna banish cards from your hand, I'm gonna banish cards from your arsenal, I got a whole bunch of arsenal disruption, etc., etc. Gravy is your classic illusionist. If you don't kill him or you don't like clear the board and respect what they can do, they're going to overpower you. They have the high roll potential. They're going to dominate the mid-late game against you, like the classical like illusionist thing. Gravy is really, really strong. And then you got the linear aggro deck of the format that is going to be good against, you know, Syndra. Being good against this Verdance is going to be good against this Gravy. It's going to have a bad matchup here, but it's going to do the same thing every single turn. It's going to be that consistent aggro deck at the top of the meta. Then you got Verdance, which is going to be basically the mid-range killer. Anything like it has a good matchup into this because it's not as fast as this. It has like a fine matchup sometimes because it has incredible late game value against Gravy. Like this matchup is super even. Like I feel like I know a lot of people like it from the Gravy side, and I know there's a lot of Verdance players that swear that it's good. I think it's, you know, kind of down the line. So you just have a very, very interesting top 4, basically, I would say. I think these are like, these 4 decks are what you kind of prepare for in this meta. If anybody said they were playing any of these 4 decks, I think it's correct. Like, I know I'm gonna go to Singapore, hang out with some friends, talk to a lot of people that I know, and if they told me they're on one of these 4 decks, like, I understand. Like, it's just one of those type of things that I think is really good. I guess we're going to get into more of the spicy picks here. I'm gonna kind of go down some stuff and kind of skip around if I really want to, but we'll go with Mario next. Obviously, I talked about it a little bit. I think obviously the Slippy matchup is really good, but I think you struggle into the other 3. Something I'll say with Mario is right now we're kind of still on like the heavy dagger build. I was very, very high on Mario earlier into this format, but I think with the more it's developed, I think it is more of a relic of the past than it is a fragment of the present. I just think like it's not what I really want to be doing much anymore. We have another assassin that does the same thing that has more disruption than you, so it's better against the aggro decks. It has more like potential of getting over these other mid-range and illusionist decks. I think the problem that I found with Mario, and I was like pretty high in Mario, was going to probably play it for US Nationals, but the more and more I tested versus early editions of Gravy, and, you know, was going first against Syndra, so Syndra was able to go second against me and attack me like first. And the more times I was playing, you know, against Verdance, like, I think Verdance is really bad like a competent Verdance player is going to win that matchup a lot more often than they're not. Syndra going second is very scary if you have to hit very specifically to beat them. Gravy can make some board states that you just can't clear efficiently, or like you need to get them to a game to where like you're basically like 18-18. They'd have like one or less allies on the board, and then you can just start going face and like being like, you have to block me or I'm gonna kill you over 2 turns. But like getting to that board state doesn't happen as often as people think, and I just think it's not a position I want to be against. You know, obviously you have the the credible Slippy matchup, but like if you are playing a more dagger build and you don't have the attacks, like that matchup becomes a lot worse than you would think. Like it's not as favored as you would think it would be, and I just think it's going to be in this tier 2. I think there's a pretty big gap between it and the other decks. I still think the deck is inherently very powerful, but I think it lost a lot of the oomph that it was. It was doing something super powerful before, but with the meta changing, with like Gravy and Syndra rising, like being popular, Verdant's coming out of nowhere and winning U.S. Nationals, and kind of staying on a little bit. You know, it's kind of waned a little bit, but like so is Mario has waned a lot. Didn't have a really good conversion rate into top 8. Didn't have a really good conversion rate from top 8ing to winning either. Like it only won 2 in all the weeks. It won 2. Like it's not really getting there as much. So I think this tier 2 is probably where the max I would put it currently. Let's look at some other stuff here. I think some other things that we can look at is Kasai. I think Kasai is pretty interesting. I think your Verdance matchup is atrocious. It's just like I think if you're playing Kasai and you sit down versus Verdance, like maybe it's time to get a snack. Like it's just might not be worth playing like a 45-minute game just to like get Storm Shatter out of the game. It's just like naturally not good against any of the wizards. I don't think it's good against Cecilio either. But I do think it has some pretty interesting matchups. Like it's not good against like Mario either. I think you're like pretty unfavored versus Mario. Your Gravy matchup is very interesting. I think you should be slightly unfavored in that matchup versus Gravy. I don't think you're like overwhelmingly a dog in that matchup. It really depends on your Kasai list. Like if you're playing more of like a fatigue list, I think you're worse. If you're playing more of a like the aggressive kind of Kasai list, I think you're better. I know Aaron Chance was first out of Swiss, but lost to a Gravy, but said he misplayed, and he said that matchup was a little bit better than he hoped that he played in that top 8 game. But I still think it's like Gravy has all these complex board states, so I don't want to say that like it's just like so like powerful. You're good against Syndra. I think like the classic aggro versus like mid range with a whole bunch of block value that can play good efficient 2-card hands is pretty good against you. You're pretty decent to Slippy. You're slightly favored. It's not like super favored, but I think it's like a little bit better than it's a little bit bad for Slippy. But it's not by a wide margin. I think you just kind of beat them because you have like more armor. You get regenerative armor. A lot of odd hits that Slippy doesn't want to block or can't block efficiently. I also think is one of those. So, but Kasai, I also think it's a tier 2 deck. I think it's up there with the best of them, but I think it's a little bit worse than what people think. Next one I'm going to talk, I talked about Acilio a little bit. I'm pretty high on Acilio. I think he's probably in the best slot that he's been in, and probably since he's been legal, honestly. Like I kind of a believer in this deck more often than not. Like watching Yudo play it and watching like Julian play it and some other things, just like I think this deck is better than what people think. I think it's put up pretty decent results. Like I think the people that are like really jamming Acilio for the last couple things have really figured it out. I think it has a great Gravy matchup. I think that's very good for it. I think it's unfavored versus Slippy, but it's not that bad. Like if Slippy doesn't hit the disruption against you, I think it's like you can still combo against them, and if you get combo early, it's really good. I think your Syndra matchup's kind of bad. It's not the best. But you know they don't have disruption against you, but you can't really block them ever because you have so instant dense. But if you combo in the first 3 turns, it's like you can get there a lot of the time and you can win, and it's very good. They can't really AB in your spells, so sometimes you can like kind of spell chain them, which is good. So I think you're unfavored in that matchup, but it's not that bad. you're good against Verdants. Like, that's one of Cilio's strength, is like you're good against these like dirty mid-range deck that needs to like go late and get all this value. I think the Mario's the same way. Mario doesn't have a lot of disruption. It just has a lot of tricks. You can easily explode them with the combo. Kasai, dude, they don't do shit to you against you. Like, they don't present enough damage to kill you in a proper time. Can't block you out with a God and Flash combo. Like, you combo there very well. You know, all these other mid-range decks that are trying to do the same thing, like Florian, that's kind of gone a downturn. It's like because this deck's good. I think you're kind of unfavored against Prism. I think Prism's pretty good. You know, your Dio matchup might be like a little iffy, but I think if you're hitting the correct matchups with Acilio, I think he's actually really good. And I'm putting him in tier 1 for 5. I think this is the best he's ever been in Flesh and Blood, and I'm pretty high on him right now. I wouldn't be surprised if I saw one in the top 8. Yeah. Basically, for this tier 1, I think one of them, at least one, will make top 8. I'd be surprised. Like, I think there's going to be at least one in top 16, like locked. Like, there's one of each of these in the top 16. I think there'll be multiple copies in the top 16. I want to say there's going to be like one sprinkled of all of these in top 8, unless like there's like a bad weekend for something. Like, maybe like the good pilots, you know, got gigabombed by draft, but like I'd expect one of each in here. And then I would probably say 0 to 1 copies here. An outside chance of one being in the top 8 here if they hit the good matchups. Like, but I'm pretty high on Acilio right now. It is probably the best I've thought he has been. Another deck that I want to put on the top is Prism. I think Prism has a pretty interesting matchup spread here. I think the Prism Copers are... I think this deck is so much better than it is. I think it's still good. Like, every single major event, people are like, you know, Prism's not that good. You know, it's, you know, the Copers, etc., etc. Don't get me wrong. I think the Prism players are dreadful to talk to, except for Kevin. I love Kevin. But like, they're just dreadful to talk to. Like, that's the only reason people play it less, because the people just bitch about the character like so often, and then you're just like, wait, the deck is good. Like, the deck does a very powerful thing. Like, your Slippy matchup's unfavored because they have seven power poppers out of the board, and like they have disruption against you, and they tear down your hand. They have a lot of armor, so it's hard to hit. I'm not really a fan. Like, I think the Slippy into Prism is like very good for Slippy. I think like Gravy is a very intricate matchup for the Prism. I think like maybe you come out ahead in that matchup, but it's like very even and it's kind of skill based, so I think that's fine for it. I think you're good against Acilio. I think you're good against like these kind of mid-range like piles that don't have a lot of like not a lot of poppers. I think your Syndrome matchup's good. I think your Vern's matchup is like good to even, like even to good. Like, I think you might be there. So put Prism is 1.5. I would it if I saw one in top 8, I'm not gonna be surprised. I think it has decent matchup spreads across the board, but if I didn't see one in top 8, I wouldn't be that surprised. I think it has a lot of tricky matchups currently that are like skill based, and you know, things have to line up for like it to win the matchup. So I think it's a good deck. I think it needs a little bit of help. 6-0 draft with like a good, decent CC record would help for it to top 8. But I think it's fine. Another deck I want to talk about, Dio. I think Dio is really powerful. I think Dio is pretty interesting. I think it's the Slippy matchup's not that good for it because it can not get fatigued really, but like fatigued by damage. I think Slippy has enough armor to like not get blown out from the Moon Grenade stuff, but it also has like decent disruption against you. It's a lot of banished effects, which Dio has always kind of been a dog into. It's just like, it's a good deck, has a good high roll. I think a lot of the new cards are good for it as well. Like, you can do the cog machine kind of like late game like fatigue thing if you really wanted to, and like some other stuff. I know a lot of people are high on this. You know, my good friend Ian won Dutch Nationals with it. I think like the deck is good. I think I wouldn't fault anybody for playing this deck. I think it's a good tier 1.5 deck. That's basically all I'll say with it. I think it's better than what people think. I think your Verdance matchup is a little shaky. I think your Syndrome matchup is like good aggro race here. I think you're good against Gravy. This is pretty this is unfavored. Like, this is kind of like an even matchup to maybe unfavored. This is just like who can find their thing first. I think you're probably decent against Mario. I think you're probably losing against Kasai and maybe losing against some other stuff here. But I think has good enough. Dio is like one of those decks that like the top 1% of Dio players just like make your unwinnable matchups look like buys. And then like you watch other people and you're like, wait, how, like, why would I ever bring Dio? And then you watch these people play and you're just like, oh my god, this is like, it looks so broken for some reason. So it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. All right, moving forward, let's go with Kano here. One of my favorite decks of all time. I think Kano's an interesting spot. I mean, he hates seeing aggressive assassin that has AB3 spell weight 3. I mean, you can blow up Syndra if you hit in the first like 3-4 turns. Your favorite against Verdance. I think the Kano players really understand how to play against this Verdance matchup. Is very good. You're pretty good into Gravy, even through like AB3 if they're not playing like a lot of tech cards into you. The thing with Kano is like there's one of the best tech cards ever printed against Kano. But like the deck is so powerful, but it's so linear. Powerful linear deck has its combos decent. I feel like a lot of the Kano lines and play patterns is like worse than you lost a lot of equity because they banned the tomes. So like a lot of the skill of the deck is out of there, but like, you still have these insane pop-off turns that are just like kind of crazy. And I think he's like a solid tier 2 deck. I don't think like I'd kind of question why people would bring him for the PT, but I think he's like decent. I think he's like decent to some decks, but you're really trying to hit like the good matchups. Like if you're hitting Kasai, you're hitting Acilio, you're hitting like Verdance, you're hitting Gravy. I think hitting Syndra, I think you're good. But like you have some pretty bad matchups in there. You got like the Mario matchup with the AB Spell Void 3, you got the Slippy matchup with the AB3 Spell Void 3, you got the Prison matchup, which is basically unwinnable. Like you're a high risk, high reward deck. But I still think he's kind of like a tier 2. Then we're looking at Florian. Dude, how far has this deck fallen? It was a deck that literally had multiple cards banned from it because it was going to LL too fast. They changed the whole LL system for it to not LL, basically, and banned cards from it. And then you get to this position where like nobody respects the deck. One of the best counters for the deck comes out of like the meta. You have some of its worst matchups at the top tables, right? Like you're good into Slippy, right? Don't get me wrong, but like Gravy's a bad matchup. Syndra's not a good matchup. Like Verdance isn't a good matchup. Like cool, you're probably good against like Dio. You're bad into Acilio. You're bad against Kano. You're probably good against like Kasai. You're good against this Mario list. You're probably like middling to good into Prism, but like I just named like 5 bad matchups in the tier 1 through 2. Like I think he's struggling to get wins right now, and like he's kind of an outside deck. I think he's in this 2.5 kind of range to where like it needs some help. Like I don't know if it's like reaching, but like I think there's going to be a low percentage of this deck at the PT. And, like, I think people that are just like Florian and his playstyle are going to play him or being like, I have the tech, guys. I have the tech. Like, I think that's what you're going to see a lot of this Florian. Let's put some, like, there's a lot of stuff down here. I think I want to get rid of a lot of this Jorgen here. Levia, don't play that. Olympia, just don't. Riptide, same thing. Azuri, there's better assassins. Teklo, don't play that either. Anything else? Bravo. Puffin as well, just not there. Max is not there either. I think these are more interesting that I can put into some of these tiers. So let's talk about Ira. This one's interesting. I feel like every time I look at the Armory deck, these cards should be good. Like, I think the Vengeance Edge of Autumn deck should be good. I think it should be better. I think it should be better than, like, the credit I've seen online currently. It's just, like, the deck comes out the 11th. It has like literally 1 week from it coming out to like the PT happening. So like there's not gonna be a lot of like flush out lists for it. I think the top tier is like decent for it. Like I think you're probably a dog into Verdance. I think you're pretty good into Syndra. Probably good. You're good into Gravy. I think you have like around an even matchup against Slippy. You're maybe like even to below on a lot of the other stuff that's like on the top. I'm just not convinced that Ira specifically is the answer to like this meta. I think you're hitting like some good top tier matchups, but basically I'm gonna put in like the more could surprise. I just don't know where this deck is currently. And I'll talk about Katsu here too. I think the new Ira like deck cards are good for it. I don't know how good the builds are. I haven't really seen a lot of it. Basically, I'm gonna put them in kind of in the same vein of like I think these could surprise. And like if somebody comes out and is like, "Yo, I found it. I found the Katsu. I found the Ira deck that abuses the new cards. I found the ratios, and I top 8 with it." Like I could see that happening. But I could also see there's just none of them at the top tables because they just don't have the ratios correct. It's not as good as they think. They need the list to be flushed out a little bit more to like maybe get into this tier 2 kind of a thing. They don't hit their good matchups. Like they run into Verdance, they run against a Prism that just goes like Herald to them like every single turn and just like blows them out of the water. Like I'm scared for a lot of these decks into a lot of these decks. If they don't draw the right thing or don't draw disruption, don't draw the aggro things. So I'm not too happy about. I'm also putting it right here. All right, let's look at some other things. Let's look at some cope classes here. I think I like to call them Fang. This is just not the warrior you want to play right now, dude. Like I think this is just like you're like behind in this matchup. Like you're behind in this matchup. You're behind in this matchup. Like you're bad into Syndra. Like you just have like all these matchups. Like I guess you're fine into this, maybe this. Like I just don't. Every time I look at Fang, I'm like this deck should be good. But like if you don't get 3 fealty by like turn 2, like if Fang gets a fealty by like I don't know, like I feel like if you don't get a fealty, like all 3 fealty by like turn 2, like the deck just like is just not good. It's just not good. Like it should be better than what it is, but it's just not. I think you're just reaching with this deck of like trying to find the line. It's just not. It's not what I want basically. Let's look at Azalea. I think Azalea is the last deck that is super good in this. What I'll say about Azalea is it's at 9.99. I think it's good. It's put some ones this season. I think you can do a lot of powerful things. I think like the Slippy matchup, they have so much disruption against you that like it's not that good. I think like if I'm playing Azalea right now, I want to play like a hybrid like New Horizons and the other hat list. Like I want to have the dominate versus like some of the decks in the format, but I also just want to have like the insane value because I know a lot of my arrows are going to be hitting versus these aggro decks, right? So I'd probably put Azalea in this 1.5 range. I think it did pretty well this season, but I think there's like I think there's a lot to it want to be a top deck, but like if I saw a copy in the top 8, I wouldn't be surprised. Like I think it has good matchups. Like I think your Verdance matchup is good. I think if you ran the Ledger Syndra, it's good. Like you have a lot of games versus Gravy where like you just hit dominated arrows and you just go there. You can run the Ledger Dio, you can run the Ledger Cilio. Your Prism matchup is kind of uneven. Like I don't think your Slippy matchup is that good. I think you can high roll a lot of dominate versus a lot of decks. So that's kind of where I put like Azalea right now. I don't think it's that good, but I don't think it's bad. Look at Victor. I think a lot of people were specking on Victor recently. You're looking at like a decent matchup against Slippy. You're looking at a decent matchup against Syndra. maybe your Dio matchup isn't that bad. Your Azalea matchup has been favored for like the longest time. Like your Prism matchup's pretty good. Like it's you're looking, you're like, oh, maybe Victor is good. Like a lot of these, new left and all that stuff. But I think you're just reaching. I think you're reaching a little bit. I think he is a 2.5 deck. I think you have some good matchups in some of these decks, but I think you're reaching on a lot of them. Like, I don't want to really sit down against Kasai. I think they're going to outvalue me. I think Arachne is going to outvalue me as well. Florian is going to outvalue me. You don't want to see Kano. Cilio's not that good. Verdance eats you alive. Gravy eats you alive. Like, I think you're going to hit a lot of these matchups where you sit down and you're like, oh, this is a good one for me, and then you're going to lose it. And then you're going to play like Verdance, you're just going to you're like, oh, this is such a rough matchup, So just don't think Victor's the play currently at all. Dory. I think Dory is interesting. I think I've seen a lot of people be like specking it. Like, theoretically, it's supposed to be good against like Syndra and Gravy. But every time I see this Gravy matchup, I'm like, I think it's so, you can just lose it. It just like makes no sense. It's like one of those matches you're like, this should be like 70-30, like 80-20. But like, I think the numbers are there, but like every time I watch it, I'm like, man, this Gravy just won this matchup that's supposed to be like basically unwinnable. And like, it didn't seem like the Dory does anything like impressive at the game. Like, you're supposed to get all these counters, but like sometimes you just swing at Gravy and they're like, I'll just block 12 on this to like reset your counters. And then like, I don't know, like I'm not really super impressed with it. I think it's like a kind of a tier 2. I think it could be like a meta. I think you could hit a meta in a very certain place, but I'm not like super impressed with the deck in general. Jarl. Dude, this deck is so dog shit, bro. Like, it's just so, it's like, it's so reaching, dude. It's like, every time somebody talks to me about playing Jarl, I'm just like, this deck is like so much worse than the card pool gives it. It's like, it's so obvious that Chronoseeds was like the thing that like CYB's out. You can't even fatigue people correctly anymore. Like, Chronoseeds doesn't exist in the format anymore. Like, you're trying to do all these things. Like, Guardian needs the mastery pack so bad. It's just like one of the classes of the past. It's just like, it's just reaching. Like, I think like, I just don't think it's good enough. KO. Here, I'll put KO here. KO is pretty interesting. It hasn't really gotten anything in a long time. Like, it got sea legs. Some people are not even playing it. I don't know. KO is very interesting to me. I think it's like one of those like 2.5 decks. I just don't think it's like extremely good, but like it's not a bad deck. I just think it's like a token of the past, basically. It used to be one of the best meta decks of all time, and now it's just kind of waiting to LL, waiting for more powerful decks to LL, basically. So yeah. Bolton. I think Bolton's like kind of reaching. Could surprise. Like, I think your Bolton matchup versus like some of these characters are like not that bad. I think it's better than people think. There's just not a lot of Bolton players, I think, is the problem. That like the deck is kind of reaching a lot of the time, but I think it does a very powerful thing. And like some like NIMBY type of decks could be good. But I think you're kind of reaching on this deck. Marlin, what surprised me is like I didn't put Marlin in Dome play. I think it's actually better than what people think, but I don't think it's like actually incredibly strong. I think it could surprise a lot of people, but I am putting in the 2.5. I don't think I don't want to use the Azalea bow. I want to use the cannon, and I think you can get into some like interesting board states with cannon versus a lot of decks. I'm not like high on it, but I think there is something with the cannon. Maybe Azalea needs to leave first, so like people kind of explore the cannon build more. But I think it could surprise a lot of people on that end. I'm not totally convinced, but there has to be something there. Like, you can't just have, like, double whiff heroes into, like, one hero being, like, one of the best decks, like in the meta, and just have, like, 2 whiffs. And I think there's one of the, like, Puffin or Marlin, and I kind of want to bet on Marlin with 3 of a kind, and, like, some of the Harpoon. Like, the Harpoons are so good. Like, 10 overpower with, like, relevant on hits in this meta. Like, it has to be better than what you would expect. Like, has a I think it should be around here. It might just be better than a couple of these decks, but I need to. I hope somebody comes with a cool Marlin deck that will surprise, basically. Let's go with Fi first. I think Fi is just like kind of a worse Syndra. I think you're reaching in a lot of situations. So I think I'm just gonna put him in don't play. I think I'm gonna downgrade. I'm gonna downgrade these characters. I think I'm just gonna put these. I'm just gonna put could surprise. I think I should have just made this tier list like this. And just had like just don't play these characters. Like these could surprise. These are kind of decks that fit into these. Vincent, I think this is the one that interested me the most. Like your Slippy matchup, I think is like even. Then Gravy. I like assume this matchup has to be bad, but then I see people win it, and I'm like, okay. Like, I think Verdance is the easier out of, like, it is, like, the harder out of the Earth characters. I thought, like, the Flurry matchup was easier than the Verdance matchup. I think you're really good into Syndra. I think you're really good into Cilio. I think you're really good into Prism. I think your Dio matchup is good. I think your Zalia matchup is good. I think your Kano matchup is good. But I think you're, like, struggle into these mid-range decks. Like, if there's some, like, Giga Aggro Katsu and Ira decks, or, like, maybe the more of the mid-range version, like, you can maybe get fatigued by them, or, like, if they have enough disruption. But, like, I think Vincent actually is, like, I'll put her here. I think, yeah, I put her here. I think it's like this. I think Vincent is, like, a sleeper pick for this PT. I think it's a sleeper. Like, I think it could be really, really good in this PT. And if it made top 8, I'd be like, oh, that's, like, super cool. But I don't know if it's, like, incredible. But I think, like, the people that play Vincent, like, there was the double top 8 at, like, Bologna. And, like, I was impressed by the Vincents, right? I'm impressed. I was a Vincent believer. I'm a little less of a Vincent believer, but I still think it's good. So this is kind of where I put everything at pre-PT. I think I had some good tier lists in the past, like before Pro Tours. I think this is like the most wide open one. Like, I could be totally wrong in a lot of these things. This is kind of where I'm at. Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments. I always like reading them. See where people are at. So let me know. This is gonna be my tier list for Singapore. Hope to impress. Don't really know what I'm playing currently. So hopefully I figure that out. But I'll see you guys on one of the Singapore live streams, man. I'll see you.